Hey folks, I have a very interesting video planned for you today. So I've thought a lot for a very long time on what I should make a tutorial on, and this thing just popped into my head recently, and I couldn't wait to work on it. So and as soon as I thought of the idea, I thought this would be like a very good teaching opportunity to teach about complex UI logic, a little bit of styling maybe, but also thinking about, if you have a problem, how would you go about solving it in the most simplest way? So, I mean, you already know what I'm building because you saw the video title, but this is sort of the app we're building today, or component. Um, Basically, it's a calendar from scratch. You can click on any one of the dates to set the selected date or the current date, and you can click on these buttons to go to the next month, click on these buttons to go to the next year, same for these for the previous years and previous months. And when you click on the today button, you would be sent back to like today's date. So fairly simple UI, I'd say, but there are some small niceties or complexities, you could say, that make this project a little more challenging, but it's going to be fun. Trust me. So let's just get started. What are we going to be using to build this? Well, first off, we're going to be using a framework called Vite. Glad I said that right. I always say Vite, and it's actually Vite. Apparently, it means quick in French. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. But anyway, Vite is a replacement to all these front-end tooling tools that you might have already heard of, like Webpack, or I think there was also Gulp. I'm not sure, but yeah, there's a lot of them out there. But Vite is like the latest one, and also it's been catching up pretty quickly because it's pretty fast and uh, well made. And yeah, we're going to be using that for the same reason today. Um, and the next one is TailwindCSS. So I actually wanted to make use of plain old CSS or SCSS for this particular project, at least for the tutorial. But quite lately, I've just been using Tailwind CSS so much, and I'm very familiar with all the utility classes, or at least most of them. And I've really seen a speed boost in my development whenever I'm using Tailwind. So just went with it. But if you're not here to learn Tailwind or be interested in Tailwind at all, no worries. The styling part of the video is quite less. We're going to be focusing more on logic. So yeah, you can disregard that. The last thing is we're going to be using a date library. Now, considering that we're building a calendar, we might have to do a lot of math related to dates, like adding a month, adding a year, making sure which dates have 30 or 31 or 28, leap years, and so much other math that I would honestly not want to do. Uh, so instead of reinventing the wheel like literally from scratch, it's recommended to use a date library. Date-fns just happens to be one of like the good ones. There are many others like day.js or um, yeah, a few others, but this is quite popular. So it has like a bunch of functions that can help you do what you need to do. We're just going to be using, I think, 2 or 3 functions out of this library, but yeah, I urge you to take a look at the documentation. It's pretty awesome. So yeah, I mean, you already took a look at the demo of what we're going to be building. I will share the link of this demo and also the source code, the completed source code on GitHub, and the link to it on the description below the video. So yeah, let's get to what you can expect to learn from this tutorial video. Basically, how to build logic-heavy UI components. This is sort of like the kind of work that you would have to do if you were hired as a React developer in a company. Most companies or big companies at least, they would have their own design libraries. You would want to build your own UI components from scratch, so you have most control on design or some stuff like that. So if you wanted to, how would you go about building such components? How would you make them reusable is the idea here. The second part is learning how to use CSS grids efficiently. The entire thing you see here, the whole calendar, is just one CSS grid. and it's actually fairly simple. But CSS Grid allows us to do that, which would have been fairly difficult if not for it. The third one is how to create reusable components and how to split code in an efficient way. So all the code that you see here, this is one single React component called calendar, and each cell that you see here is just called a cell component, and we're going to be building these. So we have made use of the same component for each and every UI atom that you see here to make it as reusable as possible. The last one, and the most important of all, is how to think about solving a problem that may seem complex at first. Now, when I got this idea to build a calendar, I honestly didn't know how to begin as well. It might be really easy for some people, it might be difficult for some people. I belong to the latter category. As soon as I got the idea, I had a lot of questions. How am I going to build the UI? How am I going to, you know, ensure that one starts from Friday and sort of Saturday for specific months and so many other things. But as I didn't think about it too much, I just started, and as I go along the way, I faced a few issues which we will get through too. So it's just about sharing the thought process and how how the journey goes to building something like this. Um, so yeah, that's sort of it. I won't waste too much of your time. Let's just begin. So I'm a big believer in going through the documentation again and again, just because things keep changing in the JavaScript world, and it's just you never know you're always going to be right. So even though I just did this a few hours ago, I'm going to go to the documentation to check out how to use Vite. So yeah, this is basically what I want, the React TS, and this is I guess how you would create a Vite project. I'm going to be using pnpm because I have that installed in my system. If you're using npm or yarn, again, the documentation teaches you how you can use it for that particular package manager. But I'm just going to say pnpm create Vite, and the project name is a React calendar. I'm going to pick React with React TypeScript, and that's it. I can just go into that application now and install the dependencies, because that's what it tells me to do. And now that that's done, I'll open up VS Code, and yeah, we have like a bunch of files already here. I'm just going to run this project to see what we what we're working with. So yeah, this is like the starting application. You have like a simple counter here, and you have to edit app.tsx to check any changes, stuff like that. But not going to be working on that now. Just going to be um, removing all this boilerplate code that we have. So going to remove assets, going to remove whatever's in the public folder, removing app.css. In main.tsx, we don't really need much, or don't really need to change a lot. We're going to keep index.css for later, but remove everything else in index.css. And in app, basically don't need to import anything else. And let's just have a div here that says React Calendar. Perfect. And now I'm just going to change this into an anonymous function as well, because that's sort of my style of coding. You can keep it a named function if you'd like. So yeah, this is the application. Let's go back, and we can see here that it has actually changed. It just says React Calendar now. So I'm actually going to keep the code and the browser side by side so that we can see our changes as and when we're building them. It's a good way to you develop, I feel. So what's the first thing we need? I believe, and also I think we can just get rid of this terminal right here, and actually let's keep yeah, we would need to close the server and install our dependencies. So like I said, the dependencies that we're going to have are TailwindCSS and date-fns. So I'm just going to check out how to install TailwindCSS for React, or there's one for Vite, so let's just use that. So it says npm install dev dependencies, all these. So just going to do that, npm add -d, all these, and also npx tailwind init. So I'm gonna run that as is. I have this, so the next part is I would have to edit the tailwind config to add these content files so that it knows where to look for the classes. But yeah, I'm just going to have TypeScript in my project, so it's going to keep this as TS and TSX. We would need to add these base classes into our index.css. Again, the documentation says so. You don't need to follow exactly. Follow the video exactly. So yeah, I've just added the tailwind classes. The index.css is already imported into the main file, so that's no issue. Let's just make use of one of these tailwind classes to see if it actually works. So I'm just going to say 3 text 3xl. This changes the font size. And let's rerun the server again. So pnpm dev. Let's take a look at this, and yeah, it looks like the font size has changed. So tailwind is working. Now let's just go to index.html and change the title of the app to React. Enter. I'm also going to head over to Google Web Fonts and get some font. I really like to use Inter, so I guess just go with that. But yeah, yeah, you're free to choose any font you like. Just going to copy these and Enter. I'm getting the 400 and 700, basically the regular and the bold font, because we might need to bold some text in some places. So getting these two fonts, and I believe we also need to add this class to our CSS. So show body font family enter, and now you can see, yeah, it's a bit difficult to find out if it actually changed, but believe me, it did. So this is now using the inter font. Now, let's see how we can actually start building the component. I think we can actually start creating a folder here and call it calendar to host all of our calendar related files. And I'm just going to have one file here for now called calendar.tsx. So this is going to be a React component. I can call it export calendar. And yeah, so this is going to basically have some JSX here. So again, can say calendar, and let me just import. I can remove this class right here and import calendar. But now, yeah, it just says calendar. Again, the zoom level is set up to 25, 1, I think 150 is okay. Now we can actually start. How are we going to begin? I'd say the first thing you'd need to do is not really get into logic, but build the base UI and fill it up with data that you would assume would come in. So just to ensure that you have your style fixed correctly, and then you work on logic with real data. I'll explain. I'm really bad with words, but I'll explain what I'm doing in just a minute. So yeah, first I'll be creating a div, and this div can have like 400 pixels of width. Yeah, and what else? I think for now I can add like a border to see how the calendar looks, and also I believe I would need to provide some height. So at least initially, so it's height 16, and yeah, we can see a really light border right here. Would be enough for us. Just also going to add a class to the app component to ensure that it's in the center. The enter is in the center. So MP32 to add a margin top of maybe 32 is too much. 16 is all right. And flex call items. So this is just to ensure that the calendar is set. Now, we can get rid of our height, but we don't really need that because the height would be automatically calculated. The next thing I would need is, believe it or not, just the grid. So I'm going to say grid. Now, this grid is going to have 7 columns. Why 7? Because there are 7 weeks or days in a week. Yeah. So this is how you would do it in Tailwind. You would just say grid calls 7. And this is the corresponding CSS for it. If you're interested in doing it in just CSS, it's just grid template columns, repeat 7, min max 0, 1FR. Basically, you're writing 1FR 7 times. So the available space is divided into 7 fractions. So that's what 7, 1FR means. So yeah, now they're divided into 7 columns. I believe it's good to also center stuff here. So I'm going to send item center, justify center, and also text align center. That's the center everything. And now here, just going to create a bunch of divs. So the first div, according to the design that I thought of, was just having the double left angle brackets to click on previous year. But it looks like we're running into our first error already. You can't use angle brackets just like that because it thinks it's a HTML thing. So I'm just going to wrap this with some JSX curly braces and consider it as a string. So like this, then even if it's HTML angle brackets, it'll always print it as it is. The next one, I'm going to put in the single angle bracket. The next one, I believe it would be like the month. So let's say August 2022. The other ones are just the opposite of what we already made, the single angle bracket and the double angle bracket. So we have our design right here. So you can see right here that it doesn't really span to all 7 places yet. It just spans, we have 5 different divs. All of them take 1 column space by default. So it's just spanning to 5 column divs. So what we can do to circumvent that is to add a class here just for the month and say call span 3 so that it takes up 3 spaces. Again, the CSS equivalent of this would be grid column and 3. Yeah. So yeah, this is sort of what we have. Already I can see myself thinking that this would be like a great candidate for a React component. So let's just get started on creating like a new React component to house our cell. So I'm just going to call it cell. Create a new component here, cell. Awesome. And now we are also going to let's just make this into a React functional component and add some props. Now these props, these props, they're going to extend from React props extends. That's what I needed. Props with children. So what props with children is basically it adds this children React node so that we can pass other JSX into this component. I'll tell you what that means if you're not familiar with it already. But first we're just going to pass props to cell, and now we can have access to children as the prop right here. And here I'm just going to return the div with children inside. So now whenever we try to use cell right here, whatever we pass inside, that would be the contents of children. So, sort of similar to what we're trying to do here. So that's our cell component. I'm just going to replace all of these divs that we have here as cell. And now it says, class name is not a prop. And we need to fix this because we can't pass class name into a component that we just created. We need to assign it as a prop. Right? So let's add that prop. Let's add class name. which is an optional string. Now we can make use of class name here and just add class name equals class name, and now it works as it. Now if I were to like add classes right here, it would apply to all of the cells, not just any one. And since we have to like merge these classes, I'm going to actually make use of really cool utility library here, and it's called, I forgot what it's called, CLSX. So CLSX, it's pretty simple. What it does, it just basically merges a bunch of class strings so that you just get one single class string. So we're just going to be using CLSX like so. Just call CLSX, import CLSX from CLSX, and call a function where you can pass class name. And along with class name, you can also pass a string. Basically, this can take n number of parameters, and all of these, not parameters, arguments, and all of these arguments would be merged together at the end. I'll show you what I mean in just a second. So I would be adding maybe like a height of 40 pixels for each cell. I think that's sufficient, or maybe like, 48. And yeah, the regular flex item center, justify center, so that all of the cell items are all neat and centered. I think I'd also like some borders on the cells. So what I'm going to be doing is adding a border on the bottom and adding a border on the right. So what this is going to do is basically add just bottom and right borders for every cell. So now what we can do here is for the overall component, we can just add a border to the top and a border to the left. So we wouldn't have any double border issues. Just a little CSS trick there. So yeah, let's take a look at what CLSX has done to our component right here. You can see here that we have all our classes from the cell, but only for this one we have all our classes plus the class name that we also um, passed as a prop right here. So it just merged both of them into like one single string. A pretty neat utility function. Yeah, so now we're just going to go on building the next row, which is going to be the week or days of the week. So new cell, and what I'm going to be doing here is you could just type all of these and say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Monday. Did I miss anything? No. And yeah, I believe Sunday has to be first on most of these things, most calendars. But yeah, this is one way of doing it. The other way, which I would actually like, is just to create days of week array, and this array can just contain all of these strings right here, like so, and just make them into strings. So now we can just loop over this array right here. So map day. All right. And for each day, we're going to be creating a cell with the value of day. And this gives us like the exact same result, but with much less lines of code. Now we can also apply like certain classes for just the days of the week. So for example, I would want to maybe make this much smaller font size. So maybe text SN. I would also want to maybe make this a bit more bold and uppercase as well. So yeah, maybe not uppercase. Seems like it's screaming at me. So yeah, this is quite all right. Now we're going to be actually building the dates. So again, just say cell and then 1, 2, 3, and so on. So right now, we have to like copy paste and type this like 31 times, but I'm going to be showing you a neat little trick that you can do with VS Code, or specifically something that is in VS Code called emit. So let me first check if this actually works. I'm going to say cell, and you can see here already it creates an emit abbreviation, and then this is going to be like the content of cell, and it's just going to be a dollar sign, and we need this 31 times. So you can see here that the result of this string, once I click on tab, this string would just get activated, but the result would be basically 31 times that with an increasing number. So again, neat trick, click on tab and you have 31 cells. Now if you save it, you have literally, um, your calendar is almost ready, at least UI wise. So if you were wondering how you were going to just insert empty cells right here, I would just add an empty cell with no children, and it would create an empty cell like so. So that's sort of it. So that's a great start. Almost all of our UI styling is complete. Now we can just dive into like the good stuff, which is the React, or the logic. So initially, I'm just going to think of how would I get like the current date, or maybe maintain state. So I could probably maintain state within this component right here, but since I want this component to be reusable, I would actually just prefer getting the value and a change method or change handler from a parent component and get these as props. So what I mean is I would probably want to create a state within my app somewhere here. So use state, and this is going to return two things: the current date and the set current date function. And we're going to make this default to the current date, and we can do that with JavaScript's new date. Now we would want to pass this as a value, the current date as a value right here, and an onChange function. This onChange function, we would want it to return like a date, and we will write that in just a second. Right now it's erroring out, but when it returns a date, we just want it to set current date. So let's go ahead into calendar, the calendar component, and write these props. So interface props value is a date, and you don't necessarily need to provide a value. We can default it to something else within here, and on change. So an on change can be a value of date, and we would be sending back date. Now we can make use of this right here when we say react.fc props, and now you would get all these values right here. So value and change. Now let me just console log value right here to check if it's actually working. No harm in like checking if stuff is working all the time. So you can disregard this. Actually, let's not. So what it's complaining about is that there's no key property when we're mapping through React components. So let's just add a key here. And keys always have to be unique. In our case, the day is unique actually. So we can just pass day as the key here. If there's nothing unique, and most of the time there's always this something like an ID, you can also pass the index as the key. But in this case, yeah, we'll keep it to day. So now that error is gone, and you can also see here that we're console logging the date, which is today's date. It's great. So now let's remove that. I think the first thing that I would want to do is get maybe like the starting date of the month, so that it would give me more information about when that. So let's just open up a calendar, an actual calendar, and check out how it looks. So you can see here that in July 2022, 1st of July, the month starts from Friday. So I would basically want this one right here. I would just change this to July. So this one right here would have to start from Friday, and all of these would have to be empty cells. So how would I go about calculating that? I would first need like the information about the start date, right? So const start date. Now, how would I get the first date of every month, no matter what month? I could like say, the current month, set the date to 01, but then there's like a really neat utility function from the library I showed you earlier, date-fns. Let's just go to the date-fns docs right here and check out how to use it. So the function is called start of, and it has a bunch of stuff, start of second, minute, hour, a lot of stuff, but we need start of month. So what this is going to do is you just pass a date to start of month, and it would return another date, which would be like the starting of the month. So let's just try it out. Start date is start of month. For some reason, I'm not able to import stuff. Maybe I need to reload my window. Yeah, that's, yeah, I don't think that's working. All right, no issues. We will just import it from date-fns. Did I not install date-fns? Maybe I didn't. Let's just quickly do that. npm add date-fns. Yeah, yes, I did. So let's just run the server back again, and let's see if our autocomplete is working. I would really need that. Let's reload our window. Start of month, yes, it's working. So start of month, and now we just pass value. So now it's complaining that date, the value, the type of value is either date or undefined, and you really can't pass undefined to start of month. So we would actually be passing a default parameter to calendar right here. You can do that with the equals operator here, equal sign, and just say new date. So it would always, if you don't pass value to it, it would always get like today's date. So this is start date. Let's console log start date, see what it says. Looks like it says Friday, July 1st, 2022. So now from this, I have a lot of information, mainly that I know that it's from Friday. So let's, we would also, need the end date of a month, mainly to calculate how many days or how many dates there are in a month. So let's just do that as well really quickly. Call end date, and similar to start of date, start of month, we have end of month, and it imported it from the wrong library. Let's just say end of, yeah. So yeah, these two values are enough to get some really good information or insights out of these. The first thing that I'd want is probably like the number of days or number of dates that are in the month. So num days, and this I would just get by getting the difference of the end date and the start date, plus one. That's going to be one minus. So yeah, I really can't do end date minus start date, fortunately, because they are dates. So what I would do is again depend on date-fns for another library, another function called difference. Difference in days. Let me see if I can find it right here. I can never find that difference in calendar days now. Maybe I'm just blind. I'm just going to be calling the function right here. So difference in days. Yeah, the function is right here. So difference in days. I believe calendar. Right, it was right here. I didn't even see it. So yeah, difference in days would just give us this function end date minus start date, which would give us, you can also do start date, and it would give us the difference in the number of days. And we just need to add one because this would give us the last date would not be counted in this particular function. So this is the result, the num days. Now, if I were to num days is a number, I can just loop through num days to get the number of days. Now we were simply, printing 31 days every single time. We don't need to do that. We can just go ahead and do something like this. So first we would need to create an array from this number. So in JavaScript or in ESX, you can do something like this: array from length num days, and from this array I can map to each item, and let's just call it n day again, and create a cell with day. Now, actually, day is not going to have anything because this array is like a bunch of empty thing. It's just an empty array of length num days. So day is not going to contain anything. So what we're going to be depending upon is like the index. And now if I were to use index, it would actually be wrong because it would actually start from 0. So the best thing to do would be to just add it by 1. Right? So I'm just going to create, make this into a based function and just say date equals index plus 1, because we'll be using this variable in multiple places. For one, inside the children and also inside the key, because it would be complaining anyway. So yeah, we have 31 days in July. I can just switch to maybe another date. I could say, new date. I would pass maybe 2022 02 01, and yeah, so this is February 1st, 2022. You can see here that it has 28 days. Now, if I were to do March, it would say 31, April 30, and so on. Already got that logic down. So that's how you would display number of dates. What else would we need to do? Maybe, yeah, I think now it's just about how to add those empty cells at the beginning, right? Because we know that the start date starts from Friday, at least in July. How would we add these initial places right here? So for that, I think I'm not the greatest person when it comes to naming things, but I'm just going to call it prefix days. So prefix days is just going to have start date dot. I would, yeah, I mean, GitHub Copilot just helps me. I would need get day. So get day is basically another function from date-fns, or I think this is just from JavaScript actually. Yeah. So get day is a JavaScript function that would just get you the number corresponding to the day of the week. So 0 would be, 0 would be Sunday, Monday would be 1, Tuesday would be 2, and so on. So in this case, prefix days, let's just console log prefix days to see what it says. And it looks like it says 5. So why 5? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the phone corresponds to Friday, and we know, looking at the calendar here, that 1st of July actually does fall on a Friday. So using this, I would just be able to know that I would need to keep 5 spaces, and this is the number that I have. Using a similar array.from length logic right here, we can do something really similar. So array.from length of prefix days, and GitHub Copilot is just writing stuff for me. So I'm just going to say cell, and GitHub it just looks like it failed. I'm just gonna write it on my own, and see if I can disable GitHub Copilot. Yeah, array.from length prefix days map. Again, you wouldn't require the value because the value is nothing. Just make use of index. And inside this, I would just say cell. And yeah, I don't really need to pass anything inside it. It's an empty cell. So just close the cell. And I believe these should be, what am I doing wrong? Oh yeah, always miss that. Yeah, so we have index. The only reason we need index here is because we would want to, um, well, there's still some error here. Oh yeah, that always happens. So the only reason we need index here is because we need to pass a key. Otherwise, it's still going to complain and give us that warning. So just pass an index. So now you already see here in the code or in the app that we have 5 spaces. It starts from Friday. Perfect. Now, what would we want to do for like the remaining? Because we could keep it this way. We could like not have any empty cells in the bottom. But for consistency, it would look nice if it's like one square all the time. So let's see how we would calculate the value of, this is called prefix days. I'm just going to call this suffix days. So to get suffix days, I would probably just need to maybe get like the end date and subtract maybe 7 from it. Maybe not 7, I guess 6, because you would need to minus 1, you would need to minus the last date. So yeah, 7 minus 1 minus the end date, end date's week of the day. So in this case, it's 0, right? Let's just see how that works. So 7 minus end date dot get date, right? And let's add this thing right here towards the end. So this one comes before all of the dates. This one comes after all of the dates. And here I can just say suffix days. And yeah, it looks like it did work, but it shot it up by 1. So I really would have to do -1 for like the end date. So let's just do 6. So yeah, now it's perfect, but does it really work? Let's change the date and check it out. So let's check for February. Yeah, looks like it works for February. The first 2 blocks are empty. Let's actually check an actual calendar to see if we're right. And yeah, looks like it starts from Tuesday, and it does start from Tuesday indeed. And it ends on a Monday, 28th, and 28th is on a Monday with 2 more days to spare. So yeah, looks like it works. That's awesome. That's sort of the most complex logic here, actually. Most of the other things are just like working on the functionality to move uh, dates or like go to the next month and whatever. So let's do just that. I'm going to be creating a new function here now. And this function is basically to go to the previous month. I think we can start with that. So const previous month, and this is a function that needs to do something. What is that something? Again, like I said, date-fns, bunch of helpers. One of these helpers is a function called subtract. Basically, this will help us subtract any number of years, months, weeks, you name it. And it's pretty simple to use. You just need to pass a date and then an object with how many years, months, weeks you would need to subtract from it. In our case, we would just need to subtract a month or a year. So yeah, the function here would be sort of something like this: sub, import that function right here and say value, and then pass in an object that has days, months, years, etc. We would just need years of 1 in the previous month, so I would need month. Right. So this function is going to return this. I don't think I would actually need to return anything in this function, but I would need to change. So we are passing an onChange function to this component. Let me just make use of that onChange. And yeah, it works. So the error here is that onChange is an it could be undefined because we don't really pass onChange right here. One thing to solve this would make onChange would be to make onChange compulsory and remove the question mark right here. Otherwise, the reasonable thing to do would be to check if onChange is actually a function. So we're basically checking if onChange exists and then perform this function. And now you won't have that error anymore. So how do we link this function that we wrote with the, when we click on the cell, it should, magically happen. Basically, this is the cell that corresponds to previous month. So I'm just going to write an on click for this cell right here and say previous month. But it doesn't work because cell doesn't have an on click prop. So let's just go into cell right now and add that prop. So on click, and again, it's an optional parameter because not all cells are going to be clickable, like these weeks or whatever. So on click is a function that doesn't really return anything. It's just going to do something. And now we can make use of on click right here, click, and pass on click to the div, because you can pass on click to a div because it has all those props anyway, like so. Now, yeah, I should be able to click on this and it actually does change the month. It does, but we aren't really updating the UI here. So I think let's quickly do that. It still says July 2022. So how would we do that? Again, um, we keep going back to date-fns. We're going to be using a function called format, which helps us format the date. So again, format, you pass the date object, and then you have like a lot of patterns here that you can reuse for month, for year, and all of that. Fairly simple, just a lot of options available to you. But what we're going to be using here is, let's import format first, pass in the value, and we just need to be displaying the month and the human readable month and the year. So the month is 4 times capital L and the year is 4 times small y. So yeah, now it says March 2022. Now if we would go back in months, it would keep changing. Awesome. We're getting very close to our final product right here. Let me just refresh and go back to July 2022. And now do the same thing for the other functions. Let's say previous next month. So next month is, it's going to be fairly simple, going to be fairly similar to the older function, but instead of sub, it's going to be adding. And adding is another function similar to sub, takes the same parameters, but instead of subtracting 1 month, it's going to be adding a month to the current date. So that's what we need to do. We've already got our function. Let's just pass it as a parameter to on click, call next month. And now when you click on this, it goes to August, September, October, and so on. Works perfectly. Let's do something similar for previous year and next year. And the only thing you would need to change is the years in the object that you pass to add. And again, previous would be sub instead of add. Make sure you change that because I made that mistake. So yeah, previous year, let's just pass this to this on click right here with the double angle brackets to the left, and next year to the double angle brackets to the right. And now when you click on this, it would go to 2021, 2022, and so on. Perfect. And let's just check if this also works. Yes, it does. That's awesome. So maybe I would want to add some styling at this point because it doesn't really feel like these buttons are clickable. So what I'm going to do here is make use of CLSX and add some more styles here. Maybe say when you hover, it would have to have a background of gray, let's say 100. Yeah, but right now it applies the style to every cell and not every cell is really clickable. I don't really need this style right here. So what I can do with CLSX is that I can pass an object and the right side of the object or the value would be whether or not would be a boolean basically. So I can just pass on click, and this, if it's undefined, it's a falsy value. If it has some value, it would be truthy. So another thing that I can do is use the double exclamation mark operator to basically say, make this into a boolean. So if it exists, it'll return true. If it doesn't exist, it'll return false. This is going to work even if you don't pass this, but it's just good practice to pass it on. So yeah, you can see here, I hover here, nothing really happens, but when I hover here, it does work because these are the only cells that I've passed the on-click method to or on click prop to. I can add some more styles, maybe active. So once you click on it, so BG gray 200, and maybe also change the um, cursor pointer. Again, all of these are, I just know them because I've used them so many times, but then all of them that are very similar to the actual CSS class as well. Cursor pointer is just, cursor pointer. Hover BG gray is basically, you're applying a hover pseudo class and changing the background color and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what it does, and looks like it worked. Now, what else? Is there anything else that we need to make clickable? I guess it would be like previous dates, right? I mean, let's also do one thing to let's display like the current date outside our component. Maybe you would need to use it somewhere um, in another place outside your component, maybe in an input box or something like that. In this case, I'm just going to say state div actually, and say selected date is yeah, let's format it actually and say current date, and the format should be db LLL 4 times y. So this would basically display like the date. DD stands for like the date, 2-digit date. The 4 times L is like the month. Again, all of this is in the documentation right here. You say LLL, you have this. If you just use 3 L's, it would go into the short form of every month. You can use that too if you like. But yeah, I'm gonna keep it as this for now, and maybe add a gap between these two. That's nice. So yeah, the selected date would correspond to whatever date is our cursor date right now. If I go back, it would change this as well. So now let's actually work on clicking any particular date and setting that as the date. So go to calendar, maybe say on click, and yeah, in this object, I would want it to return the date. And we already have the date value, it's index +1, we're displaying that. So I would just need to like pass it to a function. Now let's write that function. So const handle click date. Now this would basically be like we would get a date. This can be a number, and what should happen inside this would basically be we don't really want to call this date because what I'm thinking is we would create a new variable called date. This is just a number. I really want a date so that I can pass it back to my onChange function because it expects date. I can't pass a number. So what I would need to do is create a new date. And how would I do that? I can just use a function called setDate. So again, date-fns, setDate. This is basically going, this function is basically going to, you pass in a date and then you pass in a day of the month, a number, and then this would return that particular date, but with like the new date. I've been saying date too many times. I'm sorry if it's getting confusing, but basically you're changing the date of the current month. Right now it's 29. If I click on 14, it'll become 14th July. So that's what I want to do. So set date, let's import that date-fns. Pass in date, which is like the value, and pass in this value right here. I'm just going to call this, I'm just going to keep this index. How we get it. And this would be like the new date that we need to pass. So let's just pass it back to onChain, checking if it exists, and then passing onChain. And looks like, yeah, we didn't pass the function. So handle click date, we would need to pass it down to the onClick. And again, this looks like it expects, I can't pass it exactly like this because it expects an index, right? And cell is not really going to return any value. I would need to pass an anonymous function like this and pass an index from here because index is in this code, not inside that. So yeah, handle click date, pass an index, voila. And now all of these are clickable as well. If I click on 13, so I shouldn't be passing index, I should be passing date because already I'm not doing the +1 right here. So handle click date, pass in the date. Perfect. So when I click on 18 now, let's do 18 July. When I click on 13, 13 July, and so on. That's awesome. Uh, that's pretty great. I think we've got most of our functionality done. I think the only thing left is like, if you veer too much or too far off the path, you would want to get back to today's state. So let's just create a button for that. So I'm just going to say button, today. And this button doesn't really isn't really going to have any style because Tailwind removes all browser styles. So I'm just going to create styling from the scratch. So let's say BG blue 600 active. Let's add a hover style first. BG blue 700 active. BG blue 800. And let's add white text to this so that we can see it. Maybe add some padding, EX4, EY2. Maybe that's a bit too much. Well, one is good. And let's make it have rounded corners because that looks cool. Yeah, so now we have this button right here. We click on it, and then we have all these styles. Awesome. Perfect. Now, what are we going to do? We need to maybe center it. I'm going to add a flex item center, flex call, and maybe add a gap of 6, maybe 4. Yeah, or that should be fine. So, and also let's maybe make the button a bit smaller because it's too big. Yeah. So this is our today button. Clicking on this button should basically set our date, and it should also change the UI right here. It's in July 2029. It should go back to July 2021, and that would happen because our calendar it makes use of the current date, the value that we have here. So even if you were to set this state variable elsewhere, somewhere else in the app, maybe like a backend response or something like that, the calendar would still change. So let's write that function, handle set today, for lack of a better name. And this function is just going to set current date to new date, which would get like the browser's or the user's current date. So let's just pass this function as an on click to this button right here. Perfect. Perfect. Now I'm in 29th July 2029. Now when I click on today, I'm back to 29 July 2022. So I'm just going to go do some rough testing around here. So 12th November, go back to today. It's back to 29 July, and it looks like it changed here as well. Go back. We go back here. Yeah, looks like everything works. Come today and works. That's awesome. We got through this together. I think one more thing that we could do is probably, if it's the current selected date, maybe add some extra styles there. And that's, something that you would do within this function right here, wherever you're displaying all the cells. So let's create a variable, a Boolean called is current date. And we would just need to check if the date that we have, the date we have here, is equal to value dot date. Not day. Get day would get us like the day of the week, Sunday, Monday, but yeah, we need get date, and this would give us this would be a boolean which would check if it's the current date. Now we just pass it down to this cell right here. Let's pass it as a prop called is active, or yeah, I think is active was all right, and say is current date. Now we would need to expect this prop right here in cell, so let's add that right here is active, which is optional, and it will be a boolean. Let's use is active here, and if it's not passed, it will always be false. That's what we need to know. And yeah, let's just make use of TLSX again here. If it's if it's active, you would want to probably provide a style saying BG blue 600. You can tell that I like blue. Let's add text white to it. And yeah, that's sort of good. But right now, on click is sort of overtaking that style. We don't really need to click on the same date again. We can disable click. So what we can do about that is basically check if it's active, and if it's active, say undefined, don't return anything. Otherwise, pass in on click. And similarly here, we would want to say is active, or the opposite. Actually, we would want to check if, let me turn off word wrapping. Basically, we would want to check if is active is not true, and if on click is passed, then ensure that it is. Just going to remove these because it's starting to look confusing, but yeah, this would just work. Just make sure is active, it's not active, and you have passed in on click, and apply these classes. And now you have these classes applied to all of these, but not these, not this one. Yeah, that's sort of it for our little tutorial. I hope this was helpful. If you would want to like further work on this, one suggestion would be maybe to replace these empty cells with dates from the actual previous month and the next month. You could probably do this again using date-fns. You already have the information about how many days you would have to prefix, how many days you would have to suffix. So you would just need to get the last X days from the previous month and the next or the first X days from the next month. Display those as values in the sum. But yeah, I'll leave that up to you. If you're willing to try it out, please do, and send me the link to it or on the comment below. I'll be happy to check it out. And yeah, I'm just so happy that you had the time to go through and reach till the end of the video. Please do let me know if this video was helpful, if there are things that I can do better, and I'm sure there are. Um, and if you have any more suggestions for cool apps or components like this that I can help build, do let me know. Thank you for watching, and happy coding.